Stop me if you've heard this before, guys or listeners. The Cardinals have made some confusing roster moves this week. Just another day in Cardinal land. We'll discuss whatever the heck they're doing, which tends to be where we're at with the St. Louis Cardinals team on this episode of Dealing the Cards. Well, welcome to Dealing the Cards, where it's basically a therapy session at this point where we're like, what on earth is happening? Can we have change in St. Louis? I think it's coming, but until it's official, well, I don't know what to do with it. I'm Josh. This is Sandy and Andrew. We go live twice a week. And then we also have a fun prospects or podcast you can check out now called Birds on the Farm with Kareem. You can see on Twitter a lot, I'm sure. Like and subscribe for more Cardinals content. Also, just let us know in the comments what you're thinking in response to our episodes. We love engaging with our community. It's what makes this so fun, and so we appreciate all of the support. So yeah, like and subscribe at the beginning. Also stay later for to hear more about some of our sponsors like SeatGeek and Through and Four Sports Cards. But guys, I want to ask you guys something. This was going into last night's game, so the numbers are even worse now, or I guess the what they need to do is even worse now. But going into last night's game before they lost 3-0, and there's 3 straight strikeouts to end it, which was just
horrible. Such a Cardinals ending. It was so fun.
Perfect ending in the worst way. So here's a tweet from Derek Gould. 3 teams are ahead of the Cardinals in the wild card. Sandy, I didn't talk about this. Okay, so Andrew, you can't answer. Sandy, you can answer this. If the Cardinals want to get the 3rd wild card, and that means so let's say all 3 teams, Derek Gould said, go 500 in front of them. So all 3 of the teams go 500 the rest of the way. In the last 19 games, including last night, what do you think their record needed to be in the last 19 games to make the playoffs?
Well, I'm just trying to do some math, but if they all go 500, it's probably got to be something outrageous like 16-3, 17-2.
17-2. Ding, ding, ding.
It's terrible.
If all 3 of them went 500, so like not a single one of them can be good down the stretch. They have to go. Well, now they have to go 17-1 down the stretch.
The season's over.
It's over. It's over.
I seem to remember them going 17-0 for a stretch.
Oh my gosh. See, okay, that's the thing. They have to go on a crazy run or kind of go on a less crazy run, and all 3 teams have to fall off. It's just not happening. So I know everyone knows this. You're listening. You're not unaware of it, but who's unaware of it? Well, John Mozeliak in the front office and Cardinals ownership, apparently, who continues to think that trotting out Lance Lynn and Miles Michaelis is worth doing, even though I would argue putting out Michael McGreevy and whoever else is gives you a better chance of making the playoffs right now.
Probably true.
I don't know. Like, see, I know you have a question about the NL wild card race. I don't know if that debunks your question at all, but I'll let you go with that first.
Well, I just want to ask, like, I think we mischaracterized the NL playoff race this year from the get-go. I've been thinking about just kind of looking at the standings. Like, some of these teams in the second half have really pulled away, and credit to the Padres and the Mets and the Diamondbacks in particular, those 3 teams for playing really good baseball over the second half. The Cardinals just haven't played as well as them for the last month and a half. But all offseason, and especially throughout April, May, June, we heard people saying, like, it's a race to 84 wins. I heard numbers as low as 82. I heard people saying, if you're above 500, you'll make it in the NL. And it's probably, there's a bunch of reasons. It's probably, there's a really strong American League this year. And maybe people are pejoratively talking about the NL as being the worst league or something like that. People are arguing that there's no true top teams in the NL, even though the Dodgers, Brewers, and Phillies have all had excellent seasons. Although there's no team that's set to necessarily win over 105 games like in previous years. But the middle half or the middle portion of the division has been really strong. Like 84 wins is not going to be enough. And I was going back through previous years, and most years, 84 wins gets you really close to the 3rd wildcard spot. It's just not going to do it this year.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but the NL wildcard race, I think, is not at all the way we thought it would be. We thought it was this race to the middle, and it's not. You probably have to win close to 90 games. And that's an unusually strong National League, which is so surprising because it's just not what we thought. So if it was that race to 84 wins, the Cardinals would absolutely still be in it. It's just not, and they're not.
That's an excellent point, because I mean, you even go back to June and we're starting to have conversations about, like, can the Cardinals ascend to be one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the National League? But a lot of that conversation was based in how weak the National League was. Like, we're like, hey, look at the Dodgers rotation. We know they'll add to it, but like James Paxton was their best healthy pitcher for a stretch. It was like, at some point, if injuries and underperformances happen and the Cardinals are ascending, like they could beat anyone. But then they kind of fell back down to earth and everyone else got better, whether it's healthier,
Yeah.
made moves, guys rebounded. Like there's a variety of reasons for every team. And I mean, you look at the Cardinals record now, like I know we're all really frustrated about how the season went, so I'm not gonna deny that. But coming into the year, like I know I was optimistic and I was thinking high 80s wins,
Yeah.
which would get them playoffs now, maybe low 90s if they made some shrewd moves at the deadline. But most people thought this team was like an 82, 83 win team at most, right? Like even the more optimistic people. And that's kind of where the Cardinals are going to get to this point. So they've actually kind of been the team
Yeah.
record wise. But I think the frustrating thing is like how they got there
Yes.
is not at all how we thought it would happen, right? Like the bullpen, I think, and it's so weird. The bullpen has been like we were optimistic about it, but I don't think everyone was all on board for how it could work. And until, I mean, recently, it's shaky and whatever, but for the most part of the season, it's been a strength. The rotation, for the most part, of the season's been mid enough, right? That's kind of what our thing was. It's like, hey, as long as they get you some innings and they don't blow up like Drew Rom would or Adam Wainwright would or Dakota Hudson would, like
Miles Michaelis lately.
Yeah, like as long as they don't do that, this offense can carry them. And then, well, the offense can't carry anything.
It's
Like,
horrible.
it's horrible. And then it's historically bad with runners in scoring position, which again we've talked about. Even if they weren't historically bad, but they were just bad with runners in scoring position, it still probably swings some games in their favor this year. It's just mind-boggling how they've gotten to where they're at, but that's where they're at. And so I think I don't know. Maybe there's a world where they get to this record this year and in a different way, and we're not feeling as bad about it. But I don't know. I think missing the playoffs again, regardless, isn't great. Maybe if 84 wins was enough to make the NL Central or the NL playoffs this year, and they made it, maybe people would feel different. I mean, I can't lie. I'd probably be talking myself into them doing
I'd be
something.
talking us into it. Absolutely.
But I think the thing that just destroys my brain at this point is how on earth can you explain, and Andrew, like, jump in here, like, how can you explain throwing Miles Michaelis out there again? How can you explain the Lance Lynn thing? Like, they're clearly out of it, so why? And even if you were in it, I'd rather see Michael McGreevy. I'd rather see Quinn Matthews if you had to pull that off. And like right now, I don't because they're not going to make the playoffs. So like that one, I don't want to see. But like if you're not making the playoffs, I want to see the young guys. If you're trying to make the playoffs, I don't think Miles Michaelis is getting you there. Andrew, do you have any explanation other than like, hey, these guys have contracts and that's why they're playing? Because I'm just befuddled at this point. I'm not befuddled they're doing it because we all know they make weird moves like this and they just continue to like, we can explain what they're going to do, but we don't agree with it. But it's just mind-boggling to me at this point when it's like it makes all the sense in the world to not mail it in, but to like look to 2025, and they're still doing this. Andrew, I don't know. Can you explain it to me? Because I can't.
In fairness, I think Lance Lynn starting makes a little bit more sense than Miles Michaelis starting at this point. Like Lance
Yeah.
Lynn came back from an injury. Before that injury, if you remove that one just horrible start against Washington where he didn't have it and he just needed to give the Cardinals innings, he's been pretty good. Like, he hasn't given you the innings that you were expecting, but his results have been pretty good. Like, you look at his underlying metrics, and it's like, maybe he's gotten pretty lucky this year. But I don't mind rolling with Lance Lynn in a playoff hunt right now. But you're not in that. Miles Michaelis seems pretty indefensible at this point. I think if they give him another start,
Which they're gonna.
I mean, I really hope not. But I mean, for Michaelis, I think they're starting him because of the contract. Lance Lynn, that's it, right? At the end of this contract, he's probably not getting his option picked up. If they do, that's crazy. And you could easily DFA him if he was having Miles Michaelis season, and if Lance Lynn was having Miles Michaelis season, that would be fine. Or Miles Michaelis contract, that would be fine. Start him, do whatever you want. But there's also just a rotation logjam right now. Andre Palante's drawing starts, rightfully so. Steven Matz has been relegated to the bullpen, and he's probably the most intriguing option that I'm looking at to start for next year, right?
Yeah.
That we still have under contract that's not like Sonny Gray or Eric Fetty. And Eric Fetty, yeah, he'll get starts. He's not making a lot of money. That's understandable. But you really have to look at giving these young guys looks because that's how you're going to build your organization going forward. Because it's just not sustainable to sign 4 or 5 guys to these long-term, like veteran contracts. It just doesn't make sense to roll out Kyle Gibson when other organizations are perfectly capable of developing Kyle Gibson and paying him a tenth of the amount that you're giving him, right? That doesn't make any sense from a spending perspective, if you're going to decrease your payroll and still hope to contend in future years, like you need those guys. Otherwise, all you're going to do is be spending money on the veteran Lance Lynn's, Kyle Gibson's, and you're not going to have any money to spend on players that are actually going to help your team.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's frustrating. I understand that the front office thinks that they still have a chance for whatever reason. I don't know why. If you look at FanGraphs, which I don't think Mo looks at FanGraphs. If I'm gonna be honest.
0.0%.
There's no chance that Mo
They
looks
bottomed
at
out the other
FanGraphs.
day.
Yeah, the Cardinals are not making the playoffs, right? It's like the
Yeah,
chances
it's
for the
over.
A's to make the playoffs at the beginning of the season, right? It's not going to happen. So I think the front office just needs to be honest with themselves and be like, hey, we're not going to go on a 17-game winning streak. And even if we do, there's no guarantee that we get in.
They wouldn't get in if they were, because those other teams are hot right now. They're not just going to lose half their games.
Right.
Yeah.
And they've got a lot to play for too. Like not all three of those teams, or not all four of them, counting Atlanta, are going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and like you talk about 2011, it's like there was the race with Atlanta falling off and St. Louis going on a run. It's like you need St. Louis to go on an insane run and 3 teams to implode. Like that just it's not.
Well, no, you just need 2 of them, I think, right?
No, because
you need 2. Unless you're talking about the Cubs being in front of us too, but they wouldn't have to implode. They just would have to not play as well as us.
Okay, well that's fair. That's fair. But still, you need all 3 of them to be worse than you, and it's just not happening. So
no, it's not.
The thing
game last time made me very mad, but that's completely different.
Yeah. The thing you brought up, Andrew, that just kills me at this conversation too, and like Bernie Miklasz brought this up in his video, and I think he's watching now too, which shout out to Bernie. But like they spend so much money on this rotation, but it's like the most mid rotation of all time.
It's not even mid, it's just bad.
Well, like, yeah, mid to bad. But like it's like, okay, if you want this rotation to get better going forward, a really easy way to do that would be to empower the young, cheap arms and see what you've got in them, because if a couple of them hit, then you can spend a little bit more on some other arms in your rotation, because you're not spending 40 million combined on 3 guys that you're just kind of hoping give you innings in a mid-4s ERA to keep you in games. Like last year, we saw how bad it was when the young arms came in, right? Like Jake Woodford started the year, not good. Dakota Hudson, not good. Oh, Adam Wainwright wasn't a young arm, but he wasn't good. Libator wasn't ready. Zach Thompson had stretches, right? Drew Rom was not ready. I feel like I'm missing another starter in there who got starts who just got destroyed. Like you can't have a young arm in your rotation who only gives you 3 innings and gets rocked for 5 runs. Like that's unplayable. But like, could McGreevy do what Michaelis is doing right now?
Yeah,
probably. And he makes
do it for free.
$18 million less.
And other teams do that, and they get these arms for free. The Cardinals have got to be. I was looking at it early in the season, and I know in April we had nobody who hadn't already been a free agent. So nobody on either league minimum or ARB deals make a single start. We were the only team in the league to do that. That is unbelievable. Yeah. And normally the teams that do that are teams that have compiled super rotations. Right?
He's not an ARB guy, is he?
He will be next year.
He'll be ARB next year, but he didn't make a start in April. And normally the teams that are doing that are the teams that have built super rotations. Okay. Teams with big payrolls like New York. If New York
the Rangers have a mostly free agent traded quad rotation. So that's not impossible.
Those names are different than our names, right? If you look at New York, it's like Garrett Cole, Carlos Rodon. These guys have been there. They've contended for Cy Young awards. They got big contracts.
Hey, Miles Michaelis was an all-star a couple times. So.
Sure. But the Cardinals are rolling that out, and they're spending all this money, and they're spending the money on Lance Lynn, and not just Lance Lynn, like 38-year-old Lance Lynn. I mean, it's brutal.
Yeah.
Can I bring up that?
Go ahead.
That the Cardinals opening day rotation 2 years in a row has been the worst pitcher in the league.
You mean opening day starter?
Yeah, like Wainwright and then Michaelis.
Oh gosh. Well, Michaelis was the last 2 years because Waino didn't.
Because he got hurt.
2 straight. Okay. It might be 3 straight because he might have been the year before. Actually, no, I think Waino got the start. But yeah, it's tough. Also, too, like I can't lie. I came into the year saying I don't mind this rotation, but like let's also look at the standings right now. Let's also look at what's going on, and don't mind like as in like it's not ideal, but I believe in the offense enough to overcome it. Not like, I mean, we were talking, I mean, go back to this time last year in October last year, the types of rotations we were dreaming up was not Kyle Gibson and Miles Michaelis, right? It was like, go sign Sonny Gray and trade for Tyler Glass now, right? Which, I mean, we were all kind of like, will they actually do that? There was like that little stretch where we finally believed. We finally believed a little bit, but
There was the other
Anyways,
guy that I was thinking
okay,
about.
no
Maybe
one
Mo was
believed
putting-
That was
besides
never going to
you.
happen. But I mean, the
We
point
No,
is,
just
no,
were
no. I'm
there.
talking about Imanaga.
Oh,
oh,
Donnie.
gosh.
Oh,
But
Oh no,
what
he
we
wouldn't
need
have
to
been in
take
our
away is that the Cardinals have got to empower some of these young arms because they
Yeah.
can't do this every year, and they've been doing it. Like the
Yeah.
last guy to get extended run in our rotation for nothing is Dakota Hudson, right? And like that didn't work because Dakota Hudson's not a good pitcher. And I mean, I'm
Whoa,
comfortable
Sandy's
saying that.
that
I'm
now.
comfortable
You're like
saying
Dakota
that.
Hudson defender.
Look, Dakota Hudson having an ERA that outperformed his FIP by a full point for 3 years in a row was really fun, whatever. But in his last qualified season, he had the lowest strikeout rate and highest walk rate among
so
all
bad.
pitchers. It was unbelievable, honestly. It was actually crazy
So
that he
bad.
was even getting 5 innings because he's the least efficient pitcher I've ever seen. And he gets a lot of ground balls, which is really saying something.
Yeah.
But the Cardinals haven't given anybody an extended run since then. And that's because there was nobody to give that to. But that's not the case anymore.
Exactly. But I do think, too, it's fair to say going into the season, we didn't have confidence in Michael McGreevy,
True.
right? Like, okay, you
That's fair.
might have had some. But like going into the season, that's why I didn't
McDreamy.
blame them to be like, you need to go get 5 starters because we saw last year when Jake Woodford goes in there, when Drew Rom goes in there, like those guys aren't good enough. And that's also an indictment of the
True.
organization because the fact that they didn't have guys you could rely on is a problem. And we heard, remember at Mo talking at Blogger, he basically like railed on the AAA arms. He was like, yeah, like I'm so disappointed in them. Like we have to go trade for a starter. Like he was so adamant that like we have to add another starter. And it just was bad. And like to his point, you look at the guys like Semmer Bursa was pitching pretty well at the time, but we all kind of knew, like, or at least most of us knew, I was not ready to call up Semmer Bursa. I was like, this probably isn't going to go well. Michael McGreevy really didn't turn it on until later. Graceffo is still really a question mark as a starter long term. Coffin and all these guys we're talking about right now in the AAA, besides now Quinn Matthews, like we're thinking like, could they be a 5 starter? Could they be a 4 starter? We're not like call Michael McGreevy to lead your rotation, right? But to your point, Sandy, we now have at least seen glimpses of it. And when you have nothing to play for, run the guys out there and see what happens, because at least you get information. I swear, if they go into this offseason and they're like, we don't really know what we have in Michael McGreevy. We don't really know what we have in Gordon. It's like, you had the opportunity to get to know what you had and you didn't do it. That's the problem. So I'm just, it's so, I mean, my mind lives in 2 worlds right now where I'm like, if it's the same front office this offseason, I am ready to be so upset. If there's change, then I'm like, I don't know what to expect because it's different leadership. Things could be different. But, and I mean, I don't know what they're going to do with, I think Lance Lynn's gone, like Andrew said.
I hope so.
I don't know if they're going to let go of Kyle Gibson because a lot of the like people who are around the team right now kind of think he's probably going to be back. I want to think they're going to dump Miles Michaelis like they did with Dexter Fowler or Mike Leake or guys like that. But like, are they gonna like Steven Matz? What are they going to do with that? So, and like, honestly, I think you can improve this rotation just by getting rid of Miles Michaelis. But say you move some of those arms and you free up, like you're going to have to eat a lot of money on Michaelis, I'm sure. I'm going to have to eat some Steven Matz contract. But like, if you can rid some of these contracts, decline options on Lynn and Gibson, if you don't bring back Goldschmidt, or even if you bring him back at a reduced rate, are you going to use that money to go get a number 3 or a number 2 starter? Or are you going to bring in like, I don't know. Max Scherzer would be interesting to me. Not sold on it, but
they want to drop payroll though. So no, like the Cardinals will drop payroll.
I think you can add by dropping payroll though. If you drop Lynn, Gibson, Goldschmidt, and add a guy like, but you do have Max Gray Fried going up. You have arbitration. Please, I would love Max Fried, but I don't think that's
there's no reason they shouldn't. There is literally no reason the Cardinals shouldn't go out and sign one of the top starters in the market. It doesn't have to be
Other than the fact
Burn.
that I feel like he's hurt every year. But
okay, that's fine. I'd rather have someone who has had some injuries than somebody like Lance Lynn, who has also had some injuries and has also been terrible.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Lance Lynn gave up 40 home runs last year. So
yeah. Well, I want whichever one needs to run with this. Like,
yeah, I just keep coming back to Mason Wynn's year last year, right? Like Wynn came up at the end of the year and he was awful. Like if you go back and look at Mason Wynn's numbers, they were terrible. I think he had like 1 extra base hit and it was that home run off the foul pole down the left field line. And then after that,
I forgot about that.
Yeah, after that, he was terrible. He was terrible right when he came up. The defense was not good. Like the metrics were not good with Wynn last year. But Mason Wynn himself has credited that time as being like critical to his development. He said it was a good opportunity to come up without too much pressure and actually like like play at the big league level, because even though you're not playing for anything, the Cardinals were out of it. They were much worse than they are this year. And that's saying something because they're not very good right now. Like the opportunity to play at Busch Stadium, to play in front of a major league crowd, because people were still going to the games last year, but to play like real competition, hit big league pitching, take at bats, like be in the dugout. That's really important. And he wasn't doing that for the first time on opening day this year. He had 40 plus games of experience last year. I think that's really important. And I think we're overlooking that. And I think the front office is overlooking that. Why you're not giving Victor Scott, a guy who you've already wasted his option year, by the way, an opportunity to keep doing that, especially when he's making these improvements. Why Michael McGreevy, they've already wasted the option year. He's already been called up, so he might as well be up at this point. Like why they're not doing that makes me want to rip my hair out. It is ridiculous.
Andrew, I know you've been, maybe you flipped your opinion on it, but I know at least originally you're kind of not sold on how they're going to use Michael Ciani, Thomas Saggese being brought up. But like, what are some of your thoughts on the Victor Scott situation now? Saggese, like, what are your thoughts on how they're handling the youngsters right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine that Saggese up, but like, I don't understand why Michael Ciani is playing every day over Victor Scott.
Yeah.
If you look at Victor Scott's second run with the team, he has better offensive metrics than Michael Ciani in almost every regard. And Michael Ciani's just been terrible since he's come off the IL. He had that one big hit that won us the game against the Brewers, but I mean, other than that, there's not really much to talk about. There's also a little bit of I think it was soft contact, like ground ball that snuck through. So, whatever. But Victor Scott's improved significantly with his new swing. I don't understand why they're doing it other than to maybe manipulate his service time, but I think he's already crossed the threshold for the number of games he's been with the team that they've already wasted the year with him. So, like, I don't understand what they're doing with him. It's really frustrating. And I want to see Victor Scott play more. Obviously, his defense isn't quite what Michael Ciani's is. Michael Ciani's playing Gold Glove defense in center field. But he has the ceiling. He has the potential to do that one day. And I don't know why you're not just running him out there and letting him try, because it is a different environment playing in the big leagues than AAA. And it could really help his development going forward. Like, I understand AAA, he's probably going to have better opportunity to start every day or whatever. But, like, just start him every day when he's up here, right? Michael Ciani can be that bat off the bench, or not bat off the bench, like pinch runner and, like, defensive replacement in the late innings. And that's kind of all he's really good for. And he's really outperformed what we expected of him. And like, I understand that, like, it probably sucks for Michael Ciani, right? Because he came up, he took the center field job when he was like the fourth option, and he was really good. But it's time to just move past that. It's because the reason he was starting in the first place is because Victor Scott was just unplayably bad. But now it's not. Victor Scott's outplaying him offensively. And the defense, like, he's not getting the greatest jumps in center field, but I think his speed makes up for that. To at least be like an average defender in center field. But I don't know. So JC, I'm fine with him platooning, honestly. And he's playing like the first two games that he's up here.
Yeah.
That's fine. I think they're facing a lefty today, which is why he's in the lineup. But I don't know. I totally understand that. Like, I want to see guys like that get some run. But I really wish it had been Jose Fermin that they sent to AAA, because
I thought you were about to say that you wish it was Jose Fermin they're giving run.
No.
They might as well.
I just went.
They might as well.
They might as well. It's probably better than like, right?
I don't know about that.
I just want to say I'm not sure what the exact numbers are right now, but as of like 3 days ago, Paul Goldschmidt had a higher OPS than Nolan Arenado. So I'm just going to leave that here.
It has bounced back. Yeah. I do think because the Scott thing, like, I don't want to cast off Michael Ciani as a player entirely. Like, I actually really value him as a fourth, fifth outfielder next year. Like, he's a guy that's more valuable, I think, if he's on your team than he is like in a trade, right? Like, he's going to provide more for you than you're going to get in return. So I want him, and I like having a defensive substitute like that, good base runner. I mean, we know he can like turn it on for small stretches at the plate, and turn it on as in like be close to league average. Also free. I've heard this from some people sometimes. Ciani's not a free agent after the season. Like, he's got multiple years to control.
Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 years left.
He's not even. I don't. Think this is. I think he's.
I don't even think he's ARB.
Yeah, he's not. I don't. He won't even be ARB this offseason. I think he's 2 years away from that. So, so like that one, I'm like, I was frustrated that I'm less frustrated that the thing that I was the most frustrated by was when Siani was starting and Victor Scott was sitting on the bench. That made zero sense to me. He needs to be playing every day. So if he's not playing, put him in AAA. But I don't think he should be AAA. I think at this point, you've already brought him up on the big league roster multiple times this year. Let him finish the year in the major leagues playing every day. And Michael Siani can play every once in a while because that should be his role going forward. That's also why I'm okay if Thomas Saggese doesn't play every day down the stretch, because like next year's lineup, I mean, unless somehow Arenado's gone and Goldie's gone, like Saggese's not an everyday player next year, right? He's going to be platooning against left-handed pitching. He'll spell Mason Wynn every once in a while. He'll spell Nato every once in a while against right-handed pitching. So he'll be like a more than part-time player, but not a full-time player, right? And he needs to get used to that role. He needs to get used to being at the big league level and playing against left-handed pitching, and then coming in late in a game gets left-handed pitching, and sometimes starting gets right-handed pitching, sometimes be on the bench. Like, that's a role he actually has to get used to. And so I'm okay with him going through that a little bit in a way that, like, if this was last year, Mason Wynn came up and they platooned him, they didn't really play him, I'd be like, what are you doing? Like, this guy needs to play every day. Saggese, I don't see a role for him every day next year, or maybe even the year after, unless he pops off and like proves that he's better than a
Burleson.
Yeah, unless he overtakes someone's job, but that's not the where we're at right now with things. So I mean, I'm glad they finally made the move, but also, like, guys, it's September 11th. Like, we are a couple weeks away from the season being over. Like, they could have had multiple more weeks of runway here to let some of these young guys go. They could have gotten multiple starts out of Michael McGreevy. They could have had over 100 at bats or Saggese, but it's not going to happen now. And that's also frustrating to me to be like, even if today they just made all these roster moves, they're not going to get, I mean, like, I still want them to do it, but I'm frustrated that they're just not giving these guys enough time down the stretch. And to be fair, they did have, like, Nato hit the injured list last year, and Burleson there's a lot of injuries down the stretch that kind of opened up opportunities for guys. But last year's guys, I didn't need to see. Like, I didn't need to see Jose from you. I didn't need to see, I forget even how to say his last name, but the guy's last name started with a Q that was an infielder.
Yeah, I didn't need to see him. I didn't need to see him or Taylor Motter.
Yeah, like, no one needed to see those guys, but we saw plenty of them down the stretch. No one needed to see Drew Rom or, like, I mean, we didn't.
Irving Lopez,
but, like, we do need to see Thomas Saggese, Lucan Baker, Michael McGreevy, Adam Koffenstein,
Gordon Graceffo,
and no one I don't think any of the three of us are trying to convince you any of those guys can be stars, but could they contribute to the roster next year in a meaningful way? Especially
Michael McGreevy may be a star.
Michael McDreamy, but could they actually contribute to the roster in a meaningful way next year? Yes. And is that going to be important, especially when you're cutting payroll? Yeah, it will. I'm dumbfounded by some of the stuff that they're doing at this point, and I know we all are. But before we continue on with this, we want to thank one of our sponsors of the podcast. It's 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. They buy, sell, and trade sports trading cards. And so if you're in the sports trading cards market, or even if you're in the Pokemon cards, they do that as well. You can find them at 9640 Olive Boulevard in Olivet. They're open 10 to 5 Monday through Friday, 9 to 4 on Saturdays. You've seen us do some pack openings with them and some fun stuff. So there's a Victor Scott rookie card that we've got from Andrew on here, which is fun. We love our friends over at 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. Definitely follow them on Instagram because they post, like, really cool, like, individual cards, card sets, deals that they've got going on. So if you want more information about what they've got in store before you even go in, that's a great way to check them out. I think they even do sales on there sometimes. Like, they'll, like, sell cards through the Instagram or online. So check them out. They're awesome. Let them know we sent you. And then again, SeatGeek. Go for it. Well,
I think I saw an Irving Lopez autographed rookie card for like $2 at 314 Sports.
Mate, hey, buy low. Maybe it's an investment.
He's in the Mexican League. He's like 30. It's over.
Hey, sometimes those guys come back. You never know. Wasn't Randy Rosarina
Josh just
in the
advocate for Trevor Bauer on the podcast?
Oh my gosh. No, we're cutting that there. We're not talking about this.
I know, I'm just messing. I'm sorry.
Oh no. Our comments are about to get wild. But SeatGeek, if you want to go watch some baseball down the stretch, you can use our code NewtNews and you can get $20 off your first purchase of $50 or more. If you don't want to see the Cardinals, you can go to a concert. You can go watch Caleb Williams throw for more than 90 yards next week. You can go to St. Louis FC, Mizzou games, all that kind of fun stuff. Use our code SeatGeek or use our code NewtNews over on SeatGeek to save money on that.
Hey, Irving Lopez, you can go to the Mexican League, watch him play. He has a 522 OPS in the Mexican League. So,
what would that even translate to at the MLB level?
Oh my gosh. Do they make WRC plus for like the Mexican League?
I
Because
don't think so, but I know they play at an elevation that's like 1,000 feet higher than Coors Field. So it's not good.
Tough. Well, on that
That's
note,
brutal.
I know Andrew and I processed it some on Sunday, or last week. When did Andrew, you and I talked about the Gary LaRocque stuff, didn't we? Or maybe we haven't talked about this yet.
No, we talked about it when you were gone.
Yeah,
but
Andrew and I processed it.
I thought one of us talked about it too, but I want to talk about it some more because I just want to get your guys' opinion. Like, I read that when I saw the news as change is coming. Like, it just is. And I don't know the extent of it yet. I don't know how deep it will be, but I'm pretty confident that that move already being announced and who that is, like even just player development being overhauled will be important. But I'm starting to think that, like, for a while, we talked about we feel like Mo is going to be moving on into a different role, not leaving the organization, but maybe step away from baseball operations or not be the guy next year. And then it kind of swung to like, okay, maybe he will be, but they'll make some changes around him and do it like a plan. Now I feel like it might be in like the middle of that. And then Jeff Jones had a good piece. I don't know if you guys got to read it yet, where he kind of detailed a little bit about that Toronto executive that came over, which I had earmarked back in January. Because I'm like, that felt significant, but we didn't hear anything about it. So it was great reporting from Jones there to be able to put that out there about what he's been doing on the business side. And then I don't know, Jeff's reporting just made it seem like Bloom's like there is a silver platter here about like, what does Bloom want to do next year? Is it Mo's role? Is it player development? Is it something else? Like, just really seems like that change is going to happen. On a scale of 1 to 10, Sandy, how confident are you? Or actually, no, let me change the question. How major of changes do you think happened to the front office and ownership this offseason? Or not ownership, but like from the ownership level.
I'll take some ownership changes.
I love that.
I meant more so like the ownership will bring change, not necessarily change in ownership. But like, one is no change. 10 is like complete overhaul. How much change do you think we're about to see this offseason?
Man, I really want to say 10 because it's clear this isn't working. But I don't know. I think I'll just break it down a little bit. I think Mozeliak's still going to be here. I think Flores is still going to be here. I think Gersh is probably going to be here. I think they're all tied together. I think the triumvirate at the top of this is definite. They're definitely linked. I can't. Yeah, like us here at Dealing the Cards. No, I can't see Mozeliak, Gersh.
Who's Mo? Who's Gersh? Who's Flores?
Yeah, I can't see them.
314 the DeWitts.
Oh my gosh. And so in that case, I'm not really sure. Like, I want it to be Heim Bloom, and I want it to be Heim Bloom's guys, and I want there to be a pitching lab, and I want us to be at the forefront of player development next year. I don't know. I'm gonna say 6 because I think a lot of things are gonna happen. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, Kareem's our Heim Bloom.
I think some things will happen. Andrew and I were talking about it too, though. Like LaRocque, is it said LaRocque? Is that how I pronounce it? LaRocque. Okay. Like, LaRocque's definitely at a different life stage than some of these other executives too. Like, I think it's fair to say he's a good 15 to 20 years older than most of these other executives. He's at the point where like retiring is a lot more logical just based on where you get. I mean, I think a lot of Cardinals fans, if you ask them how old Mozeliak is, they think he's been around since there were dinosaurs. But he's only in his mid 50s. Like, Mozeliak's not that old. A lot of guys his age stick around a lot longer than that. It seems that he's moving out of this position. I don't think anyone would deny that, but I don't know if he's going to hurry
when, not if.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to hurry out the door though. So I don't know. I'll say 6 tentatively, although I wish it was a 10.
And if you're listening now, put in the chat, like, what's your number scale? 1 to 10. 1's 0 change. We're going to see 10 is like significant change. We only got a 1 so far. I do think it'll be more than 1. I mean, we just saw our change already, so that's already more than 1. But more change. I mean, you got to see it till it happens. Like, I do think it's also worth saying, like, gosh, don't hit the water button, please, Andrew. Like, Gary LaRocque is not like, he's not been bad at his job the whole time he's been here. Like, neither has Mo, and not all the problems are Gary LaRocque.
There it goes. There it goes.
Like it's just time, right? And I think it's
Sure.
okay to say that. Like, it's okay to acknowledge what's happened and been good, but also be like, "Hey, it's time to go." And even to not necessarily be super like, "Oh, like, we love and appreciate." It's like, "No, it's time to go." Like, they've kinda overstayed their welcome at this point. And so I'm actually right there with you on this 5, 6 because I think there will be change this offseason that is already implemented and going, and then there will be announced change that will happen over the course of the year, in my opinion. And so I hope there's less of that and there's more of the handing of the reins of things. Also, the fact that they've had Heim Bloom in this last year, again, conversation is assuming he wants the job and assuming he wants
Yeah, and that's a big assumption.
I don't think it's a huge one, but it's still an assumption. And also, like, are the Cardinals gonna structure the front office with a Pobo? Like, they don't have to rehire Mosek's position. They can go to more of a collaborative front office. They don't have to like, they might not want Bloom to have that much control off the bat. I don't know what this will look like. Maybe they have multiple like, maybe Bloom makes the decisions, but he's a little bit more heavy on the player development side, and there's guy like Flores really continues to grow in the scouting and the drafting side. Like, there's different ways they can skin the cat. They don't have to just be, like, as simple as Mo goes and Heim Bloom's a Pobo. But assuming let's just go in that direction, um, like, if they don't like, there's a different like, we see, front offices all the time fire someone in late September, early October, and they have to rehire the position. That person comes in, and, like, maybe they've been, like, eyeing the organization for a little bit, but they haven't been with them for a full year to study it and to, like, figure out the
Yeah.
changes they wanna make. Cardinals have a head start. Like, if Bloom starts in October, unlike most guys who come in with outside eyes, he has already gotten to survey the land and go ahead and start making changes. It will still take time. It's not overnight can be fixed. But I think he's set up to jump in whenever, and I hope it's more like that. I could totally see, Mo being in, like, Gary LaRock, where it's like, hey, he's stepping down or retiring from Pobo, but he's still finishing out his contract as an advisor to Heim Bloom, basically flipping roles. Or again, maybe he oversees that spring training complex building project, or maybe he does something else, or maybe he is still Pobo, but we all know Bloom's the guy in 2026 and beyond. So, like, he's kind of going to make the final decisions. I mean, like Kareem said, maybe there's a different outside hire that comes and Bloom wants to do more of a player development role. Like, I don't know, but I think it's 6 is fair to say, where I think there's significant change, maybe not as much as people want to see, but then there's projected change too. Andrew, where are you at on that?
I'm probably like a 5. I don't know. I'm still not completely sold that Bloom is gonna like for sure take over. I think the tea leaves are all there that he's probably gonna do it eventually, but I'm still holding out like I'm not gonna get my hopes up for somebody who hasn't like signed the contract yet. But obviously, like it's all very speculative. We don't really know what Heim Bloom wants. We don't really know what Mo wants because neither of them have said that. But Mo's interview the other day made it sound like there's going to be serious changes and that the organization isn't happy, at least ownership isn't happy with the way they played. Hey, ownership, maybe you should spend more money if you want to play better. But that aside,
Not happening.
yeah, it's
But
not
also,
happening.
it's not just play, not just spend more, spend better. Like, it's both.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but I think Mo's at least going to stick around. He's not going to just like be fired. Obviously,
Yeah,
that
no
would be
way.
way too big of an overhaul. But I think the cast of like Gersh and Flores probably going to stick around as well. Even if Heimblum takes over, I think eventually you can probably start to phase them out, bring in some more people that maybe Heimblum handpicks. But I don't know yet. I want to temper my expectations, but also, yeah, I think there definitely is real case for Heimblum to be here. I think he wants to be here. That's why he spent the whole season doing what he's been doing, and then um, yeah, I don't know. It'd be great, but I'm not going to get my hopes up just yet.
Yeah. I feel like we're toward the end of our conversation here, but I think something that I'm starting to see on Twitter and it's being talked about, and I think it's worth us talking about at some point is like, again, like Walker doesn't necessarily look great. You've got Gorman AAA, and like, I mean, it's such a small sample size to JC, so there's nothing to do there. But like, I don't expect him to light the world on fire. Burleson's kind of regressed second half. Like, the unbats really aren't necessarily taking the step that you want right now,
No.
and And I do think that's a conversation to have, but there's a part of me that's like, I don't know how much it's worth having that conversation until we know what happens to the front office, right? Like, because I don't think Walker's so ruined at this point that, like, if they make significant change in the near future, that he can't get put back on track, or a Gorham or guys like that. And so some of those conversations where people are like, "Oh, we gotta give up on these guys already and nothing's gonna change, and these guys, they're all gonna be busts." It's like, if you told me, like, if this was 3 or 4 years ago where it didn't seem like the Mosaic era was gonna come to an end really anytime soon, then yeah, I mean, like, it's like, why do you expect things to be different? Because you're doing the same thing over and over again, or it's the same people trying to fix it instead of getting new, fresh eyes in there. But I do think we're seeing see new, fresh eyes. And so I honestly kind of feel like this offseason, like last year, I'm more like just trying to explain how I think the Mo style could work, right? Like, how could like Mo's plan make something happen? But I wasn't like convinced that was gonna be the way to go. And like again, we talked about earlier in the conversation, we wanted them to do a lot bigger and better stuff than they did this offseason. But it's hard for me to even have conversations about the future of some of these young guys until we know what they're doing differently. And then once we know what they're doing differently, like if they have a track record, we can be like, okay, here's things Bloom did in Boston and Tampa that we can talk about, but like other than that, like we gotta wait and see, which is kind of exciting because it's like, whoa, this could be a very different run organization than it's been in the past. Or I'm flipping around right now. Or it could like there's no guarantee change is better, right? Like I think that's the one thing that I don't want to think about a lot yet. But like just because you overhaul the off front office doesn't mean you bring in the right people. So there's
I
a
hope that's
lot.
not the true.
I
hope
don't
that's not
hope I hope not either, but, like,
Yeah.
like, there is a lot more up in the air than I think we are totally, like, processing through right now. Like, I think I'm too optimistic about what change will look like because I think it'll be better, and I like the names that are being thrown out there right now, but we don't really know what it'll look like fully. We know track record, but it doesn't mean it'll be better going forward. And again, then I think there's the other side where people are kind of assuming it's just going to be bad because like they're operating like it's still Mo and it's still the kind of the same regime, but it could be different, right? And like to give credit to the DeWitts, like they were ones who like believed in a Jeff Loonhow, right? They did believe in a John Mozeliak when early on in his career, right? Like they took chances on guys, and I mean the Walt Jockey thing was a big situation. We don't have time to unpack that, but like moved on from an established GM to go in a different direction and kind of get ahead of the game. And like it felt like that's what encouraged me so much about the conversation about Heim Bloom is that it just seemed like they saw something different in him and something they were missing, not more of the same. And that's what gives me encouragement about the future. But until we see it, it's like hard to really bank on it anymore. So any kind of like lasting thoughts or things you guys want to hit on the way out?
I think you said it best. Like the Cardinals probably need to make changes, but it's going to be scary if they do because who knows? It's a bummer the way this season has turned out. We wait 6 months for baseball to come back, and then the Cardinals have a season like this where they're probably going to get to about what we thought, which is 82 to 84 wins. But it's a day late and a dollar short. It's not going to be enough. They didn't play compelling. Like imagine like having an 84 win season where you had a terrible April. So there was no momentum at the start of the season.
Yeah.
Didn't play a single meaningful game in September. Had a strange deadline. I'm not going to say a bad deadline because it definitely wasn't bad, but it also wasn't like the splash. That's because nobody really made a splash, but had a weird deadline, had injuries and stars underperform. That's like the worst. And your young players didn't take any steps forward.
Yep.
It feels like the outlook for almost every individual player on this team is worse than it was 12 months ago. Which is, I mean, except for Mason Wynn and Alec Burleson. I will say some guys did do positive things. But to have an 84 win season where all of that happens, and on top of that, there's questions about budget and there's questions about the front office. It's just not a great spot to be in. Like the state of the franchise is not good right now. So that's kind of big picture.
Who knows? Maybe we'll finally get that State of the Union address after the season like they didn't do last year.
That is crazy. I don't think we've talked about it enough that like the Cardinals have their worst season in decades. And it's like, yeah, we canceled that.
Yeah, don't want to face the music a little bit. Anyways, Andrew, anything you want to touch on the way out?
Yeah, hopefully they make big changes. Hopefully they make the roster moves they actually need to make. But I don't think they're going to do at least the roster changes. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Hopefully they just lose a bunch of games and get a top draft pick.
Yeah,
Want to pitch your dream offseason in like 10 seconds?
Hiroki Sasaki decides he wants to come here.
I'd say at this point it's just major, like it's the front office changes, and then maybe you make a number 2 starter type move, like that's a dream, but like nothing else. Like I don't expect them to do more. Like I don't even expect them to do that, but like that'd be dream to me. So based on what I think they could do or would be willing to do, we know they could do more. But
hey, maybe Hiroki Sasaki really likes Heim Bloom, and Heim Bloom takes over. And Hiroki Sasaki really wants to play for Heim Bloom.
Hey, I will say a bunch of Boston fans were commenting on the Roman Anthony being the number 1 prospect in baseball, and they're like Heim. So just saying, like the ramifications of Bloom there. I do think it would be worth us talking next time. Like Derek Gould kind of teased out that there's like if they're going to add to this lineup, it's probably gonna be a trade this offseason. And I don't think he made it sound like it's gonna happen, but it seemed like it was like in the cards that they were going to consider making well, he said a tent pole bat, which I saw a lot of people being like, what the heck is a tent pole? But basically like
somebody holds the lineup up.
Yeah, like a middle of the order bat, like a guy that you can rely on. Maybe not like star, but like I don't even throw out names right now. But like maybe that's our Sunday conversation. Or I guess I'm gone this Sunday again. But like maybe it's your guys' Sunday conversation. Maybe it's next week or next Wednesday. But maybe we need to talk a little bit about some of that stuff, or at least preview it. Obviously, we'll talk about all off season, I'm sure. But that was an interesting thing to me, where I was like, "Hey, that could be something interesting." I doubt it's Vladimir Guerrero Jr., but
that'd be nice.
Never know. Brent Rooker? I don't know. Hey, we got laughed at by some people that are like, "Why would you trade for Brent Rooker like Jordan Walker?" And it was like, takes aging pretty well right now. But
I think right now I definitely would. Yeah, I don't know. Dream off season in 10 seconds right here. It's Heim Bloom takes over. Cardinals go out and sign an actual pitcher, and they make a trade for a bat. And I don't care if it screws the future because they could win with that. So,
yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that more as we're coming. Again, we want to thank SeatGeek and 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. Andrew and Sandy, it's always fun talking to you. Again, we always appreciate the support on the podcast. And so thanks for joining in. We love bantering with you guys and seeing what you're saying live. And then we also like checking out your comments later. So if you're listening later, we appreciate the support. And we'll be back on Sunday. So see you guys next time.
Thanks, Irving Lopez.